Very good afternoon to you all, and thanks for the experts of EAA, Ethiopian Economic Association, to spare your valuable time. We would like to know about their expertized knowledge and their expertized projects, what they have held before, as a self-introduction from the experts from there. First, I'll start with Dr. Sisa, sir.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the invitations. My name is Sisa, working as assistant professor at the Addis Ababa University, and in addition collaboratively work with Ethiopian Economic Associations as senior associate researcher and consultant. Now we are almost on the way to provide short-term training on DASP for the senior members of Ethiopian Economic Association. The training mainly aims for providing the statistical package for applications of the data for welfare analysis. It covers the unidimensional poverty, unidimensional inequality, and multidimensional poverty inequality aspect using practical data set from Ethiopian Socio-Economic Survey.
May I have your expertized recent projects that you have held within the country and across the globe?
There are 4 ongoing projects underway, one of which is implemented by Ethiopian Economic Association, funded by European Union. The other project which is funded by AGRA, which is mainly commissioned for Ministry of Agriculture. The project is mainly on analyzing agriculture investment framework for the coming 10 years. That was also led by me. The other project is also ongoing at Addis Ababa University. In fact, I was also participated as a collaborative participant on grant project, which is mainly working on large cross-cutting issues, which is mainly funded by Addis Ababa University's source. The last project, which is financed by the Policy Institute, the former EDRI Ethiopia, and under this project we are analyzing agriculture production, productivity over the last 15 years. This project is also a very wonderful project, which is already on halfway and then primarily implemented by the Policy Studies Institutes. And then me, Sisa, along with other colleagues working as associate researchers on the project. The project have certain main components in detail.
Everybody have inspirations. Let us know who inspires Dr. Sisa sir as a role model.
While I was attending my undergraduate education, my role model instructor was Professor Branu Nagga, who was also one of the second chair of Ethiopian Economic Institutions, where he taught me about 2 courses, and then since then I just also impressed in discipline of economics.
What are the expected outcomes of this training? How do you measure the training needs, and what is your message to the young researchers?
As far as the issue of this poverty and income inequality is concerned, which is the main core problems for most developing countries, particularly for Ethiopia, is also quite clear. Yet, despite the government is just attempting so many effort and successive policy, the issue of poverty and inequality is not yet addressed. Therefore, in view of this, many young researchers need to also work on these areas, the areas of poverty analysis, identifications of the factors that lead people to fall on poverty, inequality, and by applying the latest statistical software is quite important. Therefore, let alone maybe the senior, but the younger is also being quite encouraged. In fact, EA is also taking the initiation of providing these advanced softwares to enable or to assist the young researchers to make their researches.
What are the interventions you suggest to the higher education institutions for the uplifting the quality of research directly and economic development of the country in specific?
My suggestion to the Ethiopian higher education is actually encouraged to work in collaboration with other think tank institutions like Ethiopian Economic Association, and then like Ethiopian Policy Study Institute, because the researchers, they also take practical knowledge so that they actually evaluate the theory against of the real situation. Therefore, this kind of collaboration between universities across other institutions is quite recommended.
I know that you are very expertise and very busy schedules you do have. Therefore, do you have any research scholars under you, wherein which we can form a small forum through which we can support the young researchers for their doubt clarification or any support on a voluntary basis, innovative research or anything? What we can expect from you as intellectual in Ethiopia?
What's expected for me is just to share my knowledge to the young using any of scientific platforms, like short-term training, like of these Ethiopian Economic Associations. We also have the similar type of training in the universities. It's also possible if we provide this kind of training using the electronic media as well. And then any doubt might also be just answered through my email.
Thank you very much, Sisa, sir, for your valuable time and insights to support the younger generations of this country in specific and across the globe in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Amarut, Cesar. I have working at Arum University since engaged in research, especially related to food security, multidimensional poverty analysis, climate change, and an area of value chain.
Could you please throw some light upon multidimensional poverty measurement in Ethiopia, in specific, in African continent in general?
Especially whenever we talk about multidimensional poverty, due to lack of data, and even though we have a kind of global multidimensional poverty indicators, the developing country as well as specifically in Ethiopia, at least the government should be adopt the multidimensional poverty indicators and dimension in the context of nation, and accordingly central statistical agency as well as MOFED should be collecting data.
What are the interventions you suggest to the regulators or the governing bodies to minimize the poverty levels within the country? And how do you see for the down the line for the 5 years or 10 years from now?
Especially in developing countries, especially those follow developmental state policy, it is very difficult to eradicate poverty. At first, it's better to identify the most vulnerable community in terms of incidence of poverty or maybe incidence of poverty gap, and it's better to targeting with those regions as well as targeting with those subpopulation, and accordingly it is better to develop some specific programs and strategy in order to eradicate by some extent.
What is your major concern about the higher education institution level research and their implications, and how do you see the contribution of young people working for a 1-year project for their master's thesis?
Great, this is an interesting question. Especially in Ethiopia, what lacks is there is no university industry linkage at all. Even our curriculum, both undergraduate level and postgraduate level, is not developed just like a kind of demand-driven curriculum. So that the first thing is, in order to improve research, especially at higher institution, our curriculum should be modified and right in the context of demand-driven issue, and it's better to strong the linkage between different kind of industries and manufacturing vis-a-vis higher institutions. That's actually related to linkage. Another issue is, especially at higher institution, the finance or the budget, especially for postgraduate studies, is so small, so that in order to improve the quality of research, either the government should be increase the budget.
Finally, I would like to ask you, sir, will you be able to support younger generations?
Great. As economists as well as a member of Ethiopian Economic Association, we have the obligation to create a kind of academic forum and to deal with or make a dialogue across a younger researcher as well as across even senior researcher, so that I'm very willing to make a kind of a dialogue with internet or maybe online, and we have to make such kind of academic debate, and I am ready to do that one actually.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your time and energy, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We are here for task training from Dr. Sisa and the Assistant Professor Amarut.
Okay.
So we are working together developing this poverty analysis here. So we were really benefited from this training and we are really thankful for them.
Very good evening to all. Today we have an experienced person over here who has attended Ethiopian Economic Association's workshop. Could you please brief about yourselves?
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome, sir.
Ravis, for having me. I am Gabriel, and I came from Midrock Ethiopia company. Midrock Ethiopia is one of the biggest company here in Ethiopia, and I am the business development and the planning director of this company. And our company is almost in every sector in the country. We are in the construction sector, we are in the agro-processing sector, and the manufacturing in the service sector. And really, I came here and to participate in the DASP training, and I found it really very interesting, and it helped me really beef up my experience in research studies in development areas.
Could you please say about your ongoing projects? And you say Unity University is also one of your sister company. Therefore, could you please say about how the private sector is working up, and also what are the projects that are ongoing?
As you mentioned, Unity is one of our business units, and it's an Arum. It's one of the business unit in the education sector, and it's one of the respected and notable university from the private sector. And I think recently they have started to give a master's program, and I hope they must have been planning also to open up PhD programs. And they have also really good experience in research, and they are co-working with various stakeholders, both from the private and the government sectors. I think they are doing good.
What about your international collaboration for the growth of your companies?
Midrock Ethiopia is one of the member of an international Midrock group. We have an international Midrock group companies in Scandinavia and in Saudi Arabia. The owner of this company, both the International Midrock Ethiopia and Midrock Ethiopia, is the Sheikh Mohammed Alamudi, and really he loves his motherland very much, and so far he has poured a lot of investments and in this country. Really, he believes in a development partnership, and his companies abroad are also performing good. So I think so we have from international perspective, we have also companies. I mean, the owner of our company has companies in Scandinavia and the Middle East, and in the US as well.
Thanks for your time and energy, sir.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Today we have the opportunity to interact with an expert from Ethiopian Planning and Development Commission. Therefore, I would like to ask a self-introduction.
My name is Arum from Planning and Development Commission. Currently I am working at Economic Analysis and Policy Research Directorate. I am Welfare Analysis and Poverty Team Leader. Nowadays we have taken so many government development projects. So among those development projects, poverty analysis and measurements are the priority one.
Sir, may I know the overview of the poverty levels in Ethiopia?
Ethiopia is one of the poorest nations of the world. The overview of the poverty level of our country is, for the last 2 or 3 decades, our country or Ethiopia has an abject poverty and deprivation level. So those kinds of poverty especially exhibited in rural areas of our country. This does not mean that the urban areas also there are poverty level. So these kinds of poverties are exhibited for so many years, but until the government has tried to measure the poverty and deprivation levels of our country.
When it comes to poverty reduction mechanisms, we would like to know what are the government initiatives to reduce the poverty within the country?
The governments are so many poverty reduction mechanism strategies adopted for the last 2 or 3 decades. The first poverty analysis report released in 1995-96. So before 1995-96, the government adopted sustainable development. These poverty reduction programs address the majority of our poor population at country level. Especially, the government focused on the pro-poor sector, which means strengthening and fastening the pro-poor sector that enables to reduce the poverty levels at national as well as regional levels. Government adopted so many mechanisms and strategies to reduce the poverty. Among the major poverty reduction mechanisms and strategies, the first one is government adopted a productive safety net program, both in rural and urban areas. So this one is the major government achievements for poverty reduction substantially. These productive safety net programs benefited more than 8 million people of our citizens lifted out of acute poverty. Productive safety net program especially implemented by 2 mechanisms. The first one is direct assistance and the second one is indirect assistance. The other mechanisms are agricultural extension package system. So this agricultural extension package system also address high level of poverty reduction, especially for the rural areas. In addition to that, there are so many initiatives for reducing acute poverty at national level. Among that, the expansion of infrastructural development, especially for the rural areas, the expansion of health package system, the expansion of education, especially for our rural areas, and so many things are taken by our government.
Well, when it comes to numbers, what is the present poverty level in the country, past, and how do you project down the line for the 10 years from now?
The acute poverty, one of the manifestations of poverty in our country in the past periods, in 1995-96, almost half of our population under the poverty line, which means almost 45% of our population under the hair count poverty level. Currently, the poverty level in 2015-16, 23.5 population under the national poverty line. The previous estimation stated as 19% of our population under the poverty. So government recently adopted the 10 years development plan. So this 10 years development plan, a pathway to prosperity. After 10 years, our country Ethiopia reached the middle income countries supported by different kinds of homegrown economic reforms. Expected reduce poverty at 7%.
I'm very happy to note that today's the poverty levels are 19% of the population of the country, and government is committed to reduce the poverty from 19% to 7% down the line 10 years. Could you please say a few words about multidimensional poverty measurement and also about the workshop multidimensional poverty measurement? Why the government could not attempt to measure multidimensional poverty? Since long it has been measuring unidimensional.
Traditionally, poverty measurements are classified into 2 ways. The first one is unidimensional poverty measurement, and the second one is multidimensional poverty measurement. As you know that, our government implemented the unidimensional poverty measurements for the last 5 consecutive surveys data. So the last 5 surveys consecutive data implies or entirely relies on monetary aspects. So these kinds of monetary aspects to measure poverty is not adequate or is not address the poor population at the national levels. So that the government initiates the multidimensional poverty measurement at the national level for the coming 1 year, which means in 2022. The unique feature of multidimensional poverty measurement address 3 different dimensions and 10 different indicators. So these 3 different dimensions are health, education, and living standards. The government of Ethiopia initiates to implement the multidimensional poverty measurement in accordance with the global poverty measurements or multidimensional poverty measurements. The Planning and Development Commission take a responsibility to compile and implement.
Finally, just I would like to say, could you please express your feedback upon today's session on measuring multidimensional poverty in the country?
Okay, my feedback is this kinds of workshop is highly encouraged for the academicians, for the consultants, and for the experts that came from different sectors of the country. So these kinds of workshops are highly encourage our capacities. So as a Planning and Development Commission, we are responsibilities to do such kinds of poverty measurements, both unidimensional and multidimensional poverty measurements. So these kinds of workshops are highly building our capacities to effectively implement the first multidimensional poverty level in the country.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure to interact with you for a short span of time. The time given has added value to the audience.